Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to where the new Stop Skeletons from Fighting office will be. We are currently moving into a new apartment, a bigger apartment with a proper goddamn office, but that does not mean that we are going to stop making videos. It does mean, though, in this video, you can see less of my dumb face because we had to worry about moving. I got my games in boxes. I'm going to have so much stuff in this closet. Look at my cool clock tower shirt. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's all about Donkey Kong Land, Donkey Kong Country ports. It's gonna be a great time. It's all gonna be just a voiceover Derek. I hope we can handle a voice, just the voice of Uncle Derek and not the dumb face of Uncle Derek. Thank you so much for the years of support. We ain't stopping. We ain't never stopping, so take care, enjoy the video. Let's go. Besides being an absolutely awesome platformer and the third best-selling Super Nintendo game ever, Donkey Kong Country's main claim to fame was the Advanced Computer Modeling, or ACM, used to make its graphics possible. Developer Rare used these same $80,000 Silicon graphics computers used to make Jurassic Park.
It's this really advanced supercomputer. Basically, picture 20 supercomputers in a box.
The graphics looked so good that at the 1994 Computer Electronics Game Show, attendees thought they were looking at an N64 game. And let's be real, they still look pretty good for the system. But I am not here to talk about the game that cemented Rare as a Nintendo powerhouse in the mid-90s. I'm here to talk about the crazy ways that Rare brought this super advanced looking game to Nintendo's extremely horror-limited Game Boy line. Because if you watched Punching Weight, you know we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary, but did you also know that Donkey Kong Country was ported to all of Nintendo's Game Boys? That is just too amazing. Let's take a look. And I can already feel some of you squirming in your seats, and that's because our first entry is Donkey Kong Land for the original Game Boy. I mean, this is not a straight port of Donkey Kong Country. It doesn't even have the same name. Usually, I have to argue about how a game like this captures the spirit of the original and counts as a port. But not this time. I have the power of lore on my side. The story of this game is that Cranky Kong is like, you can't do Donkey Kong Country on a Game Boy. And Donkey Kong's like, watch me. And that, kiddos, is how Donkey Kong Land was made. Literally, this is the story. I'm not joking. It's in the instruction book. They basically took all those back in my day jokes that Cranky Kong says and made a whole game around it. You gotta love that patented Rare humor. Donkey Kong Country was already a punching weight game for its graphical achievements alone. But for Donkey Kong Land, well, the first thing I want to say is, do not play this on a Game Boy. Ever. I happen to have a yellow Game Boy Pocket and I thought, oh, I'll be perfect. I'll play Donkey Kong Land on this. It's a time warp you do not want to take. The graphics are impressively detailed, but they're too dark and busy just trying to pick DK out from the background. And then the motion blur is so bad, it's basically impossible to play. I know that's true for most Game Boy games, that the preferred method of play isn't actually a Game Boy, but this is especially true for this one. This is how I played Game Boy as a kid, and we accepted it because we were idiots. Don't be like me. This is one of the few Game Boy games that utilizes the Super Game Boy to enhance its visuals, and it almost feels like Rare designed this with the Super Game Boy in mind. The visuals are genuinely impressive, but it's a shame you can't really enjoy them on an actual original Game Boy. Once you've got your hardware front figured out, you'll be confronted with a bigger issue. The jumping momentum feels really weird and is just off. If you stop moving forward in midair, you just drop like a bird hitting a window. After playing this game for a bit, I realized holding jump makes you kind of float in the air a little bit. It messed with my muscle memory, and I had to relearn how to Donkey Kong Country, but I did eventually get the hang of it. You also need to reacclimate to the hit detection, which I also think is a little off from the Super Nintendo original. Basically, Donkey Kong Land does such an impressive job looking like Donkey Kong Country that my brain had trouble accepting that it didn't play like Donkey Kong Country. But I mean, the Mario Land games don't have the exact same physics as the console counterparts. Why should this game be any different? And speaking of different, the levels are completely different from the Super Nintendo. DK Land is basically a remix of ideas from the original game. I mean, the second level is an ice level. Who does that? But it's a challenging and beefy campaign, 30 levels spread across 4 worlds. I gotta admire Rare for not pulling their punches with DK Land. A lot of Game Boy reimaginings are like, hey, here's a special extra little snack. Here's a little treat for you. Like Mario Land 2. It is a fine game, but yo, it is super easy and it's over in no time, right? Most Mega Man Game Boy games are fine, but they are a far cry from their NES counterparts. But DK Land truly goes hard. It almost feels like a Master Levels expansion made to keep fans occupied until Donkey Kong Country 2 came out. And since they were released only a few months apart, that was probably the idea. Basically, if you are a DK Country superfan but have never played DK Land, you're genuinely missing out, man. And Rare kept bringing it with its subsequent subsequent DK Land games. The second and third ones are much closer to actual straight ports of Country 2 and 3. Not to mention, they look and control so much better. Probably my favorite one of the whole bunch is DK Land 3. It actually adds extra content and really nails the controls. DK Land 3 was released in '97, but inexplicably received a Japanese exclusive Game Boy Color conversion 3 years later, which for my money is the way to experience the Land series. These graphics finally live up to the fidelity in color, and it's easier to appreciate what Rare managed to accomplish here. It is weird that Japan got this version and no one else did, and that it was called Donkey Kong GB, Dinky Kong, and Dixie Kong. I don't know. The Donkey Kong Land games were named all different weird things, Japan. We don't have time for that. But this brings us to the age of the Game Boy Color and our next port. Now you would think an actual, no lore caveats, port of Donkey Kong Country 1 by Rare would be a slam dunk. And it's got the look. I mean, look at these graphics and animations. What an incredible feat of programming to get this thing running on a Game Boy Color. It even has menus from Donkey Kong 64, which, that's a nice touch. Oh, and listen to this sound. This is a pretty good rendering of that OST, right? However, this is one of the most frustratingly difficult games I have ever played. If you are a Donkey Kong Country expert, step up your game. Get in the ring. This is probably the ultimate challenge outside of a Donkey Kong Country fan hack. Where to start? First off, your field of vision is much smaller, which is to be expected. Rare, I think, tried to make up for this with a quickly shifting screen, but it ends up just being super disorienting because the slightest turn very quickly shifts the entire screen the other direction. Same for jumping. The screen bounces way too much when hopping on enemies or tires. And now, almost every enemy surprise pops into view, or there are some places like in 3-1 where you cannot see the projectiles at all. You're basically forced to play this already fairly challenging game half blind. Another Game Boy Color game that struggled with screen size was Mario DX, but I do not think that Donkey Kong Country's chaotic screen shifting is a better solution. Not to mention, Donkey Kong Country is a faster and more demanding game, and at least Mario DX, you could hold up or down to scroll the screen, which you cannot do in this game. The physics in jumping are off too, especially with Diddy, whose cartwheel is now 0 to 100 in a split second. It takes a lot to get used to. The hit detection is also way off. Look at me, I'm trying to grab that banana. Like, the actual hitbox is like way to the left of it or something. Some levels are redesigned, enemy behavior is also different, like the armadillos on 1-2 now follow you with heat-seeking precision. And look, it's not that a port like this shouldn't have some changes, but most of these changes were bad, really bad. Y'all tried to warn me, I put it on Twitter, you tried to warn me, but I was not ready for the minecart levels. I mean, let's be honest, folks, okay, this game is not super hard, but these levels are already a pain. And on here, this is some of the most frustrating I have ever played. Like, okay, I don't want to get too negative. I think this game is achieving some really nice things here graphically, but like at a huge cost. I couldn't believe how unhappy this game made me feel. Like, you know me, it's Uncle Derek. Come on, it's like, you know I'm not. I can jump some platforms. I ain't bad Donkey Kong Country. This game is just a different experience, and I don't think a good one. And this game was also made at the same time as the Perfect Dark Game Boy Color game, and I feel like maybe Rare wasn't feeling too committed to Nintendo's properties when this game came out. It's not all bad though. This does add some bonus stuff like this neat little fishing minigame, multiplayer with link cable support, Game Boy printer support. It's not quite Perfect Dark on sheer ridiculous amounts of bonus features, but it's something. And for what it's worth, the music I think is really good. It sounds like an awesome downgraded NES game. This game's version of Aquatic Ambience, probably the favorite DKC track of all time, sounds great. It is missing a few songs, but in their place are some originals, and they sound like something you'd hear in Solar Jetman or Battletoads. And if that sounds like your kind of thing, you know who you are. The Land games aren't perfect, but have charm and personality enough to genuinely recommend. However, this Game Boy Color port, I leave for the speedrunners and the super fans who know the game by heart. For everyone else, my advice is you skip this port and you go straight to the 2004 Game Boy Advance port. This port has the same campaign, but with levels much closer to the SNES original, plus plenty of extras like an updated version of that Funky Kong fishing game, plus a dance minigame with candy, and the music's actually kind of alright. Yeah, sure, why not? But what's interesting about this port is that it came out after Microsoft bought Rare Studios from Nintendo, but is still published by Nintendo. If you didn't know, Rare's non-complete clause with Microsoft didn't include handheld games, which is why Rare games kept appearing on the GBA and DS long after they were a Microsoft company. This version was totally rebuilt from scratch for the Game Boy Advance, but I feel like it really honors the source material. Like, quick aside, I don't think it was rebuilt from scratch by choice. Remember how the original Donkey Kong Country was developed on those amazing Silicon graphics computers? Well, all that ACM came at a cost. All the original assets for DKC were stored on floppy disks. Some of them were lost, and the rest were saved on too obscure and funky a format to actually pull from. To hear it from Rare, they say it wouldn't have been possible without emulators.
The artists sat with SNES emulators, stepping through the game one frame at a time with various sprite and background layers toggled and taking screenshots. Most of the backgrounds were redone from scratch to look as best as possible in the color palette and scale/resolution of the GBA screen. Rare co-founder Tim Stamper.
I just wanted to throw that out there because if you are a dev, make sure you save your projects. Even if you're just editing videos like us, make sure you got those autosaves on. Okay, PSA over. Back to the review. Gba Dkc is about what you'd expect. Not completely like the original SNES game, but close enough. The screen size feels right, enemy behavior feels right, physics and hit detection feel right. That might not sound that impressive, but dude, play these 3 ports back to back to back like I have, and this will feel like wearing clothes that finally fit. Plus, the extra cutscenes and dialogue are fun. We actually get to see Diddy get jumped while guarding DK's banana horde. But like a lot of GBA ports, the look and sound isn't quite up to snuff with the Super Nintendo. Colors are a little bland. The music is definitely a downgrade. This version of Aquatic Ambience, I think, is pretty weak. Though you can save at any time on the overworld, which is actually a pretty big deal. It wasn't that simple on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color ports. There's extra collectibles, newly designed boss battles. Oh, and something I think is really fun for super fans, the inclusion of hidden warp barrels. It's something I only noticed when watching speedrunning videos, but this is the type of thing I love to see. I mean, it's not for me personally, just from the sidelines. I love seeing a whole new way to play a classic game. I'm not saying this port is perfect, but I want to point out that this port is different from the SNES original, and that's something that all these ports do. They offer something a little different for these classic games. This is important because in the years after the GBA ports, the Super Nintendo and Game Boy Land trilogies were brought to various virtual consoles, including just originally to Switch Online actually, but not the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance ports. These have never been re-released. So if you take nothing else from this video, do not sleep on these ports, especially the GBA port, because it's more than just a port, and I worry that that's been lost to time. But that is going to do it for this episode of Punching Weight. If there are any more weird, ambitious, or unnecessary games, let us know in the comments below. I apologize again for the lack of seeing my face in this video, and maybe the sound quality as well. Again, our apartment is empty right now because we're moving, so hopefully the next time you see my dumb face, it will be in a brand new space, and I'm really looking forward to that. If you want to support Stop Skeletons and Fighting, tell a friend, watch with a friend. You know, next time someone says, what's your favorite YouTube channel? You know, lie and say it's this one. No, but if someone's asking, hey, what are good YouTube channels to talk about weird games? Let them know about Uncle Derek, let them know about Producer Grace, let them know about Stop Skeletons and Fighting. If you want to support the show more though, we got a Patreon for just $1. Get videos early, get access to our Discord, live chat during our podcast recordings, or hey, you know what? Just keep watching, keep sharing, and you stay powerful. Thanks for watching.